Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I hope everyone is enjoying this rich day that we've had at EWI. We certainly have had a fantastic set of topics and speakers, and I assure you that this evening will be no different. I get the distinct pleasure to introduce somebody who's been on the vanguard of cybersecurity issues for more than 20 years. And that remarkable person is Mr. Chris Painter. Chris Painter has recently been appointed in a very trailblazing role for the U.S. government. That is the U.S. State Department Cyber Coordinator, in which he plays a sort of a very critical link between the U.S. government and governments around the world on cybersecurity. Before taking this role, Chris has spent the past several years at the White House, where he has been one of the key point people in leading the national review that took place looking at U.S. cyber policy, and been a driving force behind the release of the U.S. international cybersecurity policy. Chris has had an amazing career. Before that, he has been at the Department of Justice, where, if I'm not mistaken, I think Chris has led every G8 high-tech cybercrime group since 2002, which I'm sure is a record, and for which it will be a long time before anyone's able to do that. But Chris has also made some significant changes in cybersecurity. He was the prosecutor for Kevin Mitnick, and also handled many other high-profile cases. So we're very fortunate to have Chris with us this evening to talk about where the U.S. strategy is going and where he is taking things. So Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you for EWI to organizing this conference and inviting me. Thank you, Paul, for those kind words. I'm certainly honored to speak to this really august international group. Many of you I've known, many of you I'm meeting new or haven't seen for a while, and some of you are new friends. I want to thank Paul for the intro. I think, as Mike Chertoff said to me just a few minutes ago, who I had the pleasure of working with at the Justice Department, you look at that career and it's clear that I haven't been able to keep a job. Every 2 years I seem to move to something else. I also have to apologize for the photo in the little brochure you have at the dinner. When I went to the State Department, it was remarkable. They take your official photo, they take many different pictures of you, and the person offered to use Photoshop on the picture. And the picture that you have is a testament to the limits, the technical limits of the Photoshop program. I started life, I didn't start life as a lawyer, but I was a lawyer by training in the beginning. I do a lot of policy work now. I've always had an interest and passion for international issues. As a lawyer, I'm always prone to tell lawyer jokes. The problem with telling lawyer jokes, and I'll tell a joke at the end of my speech, but the problem with telling lawyer jokes I found in many years of doing this is that lawyers don't think they're funny, and non-lawyers don't think they're jokes. So with that, I'll move on. It's amazing to witness how much cyberspace has transformed our lives and society over the past few decades, enabling innovation, bringing people together around the world more so than ever before. I know, and I'm a bit of a geek, I know that many years ago in the 80s, I had an Amiga 500 computer, and I was connecting by dial-up to various bulletin boards, and I never really dreamed that it could have the kind of power, the transformative power that it obviously has, and how it's had such an effect in everything in our everyday lives. But I think we now face a remarkable inflection point in the development of this technology. Nearly every international forum around the world and every one of our bilateral relationships is considering this issue. You recently heard, and you've heard from the minister when he was speaking earlier today, about the US-UK statement on cybersecurity issues. In the G8, I was fortunate to be the quote-unquote digital Sherpa to the G8, a group of people who had expertise in this area. And the G8 communique that came out of the recent meeting in Deauville showed the breadth of these issues and the importance, and talked about security issues, talked about free flow of information area issues, IP issues, internet governance issues, the full range of different topics. Foreign Minister Haig in the UK at the Munich Security Conference talked about having a meeting, which is being organized in the fall, to talk about norms in cyberspace and how important those were. In the OECD, there's going to be a meeting in the summer talking about internet principles for internet policymaking. So almost every forum you can think of is now focusing on these various issues. And the decisions that we make today and in the next few years on a wide range of issues in this space, not just cybersecurity, but cybersecurity, governance, internet freedom, military aspects, the full range of issues, will really shape the future of this transformative technology over the next several decades. The questions are, can we together build a global consensus around a shared vision of the future of cyberspace that serves rather than impedes the social, political, and economic aspirations of the people around the world? Can we together ensure this technology continues to promote innovation and the free flow of information and ideas, or will cyberspace become a balkanized space dominated by criminals and other threats and a tool for repression? Against this backdrop, and to help answer these questions in a positive way, the U.S. and our president has developed and released the International Strategy for Cyberspace, this fine document here that many of you have a picture of on your chairs. And I would urge all of you to look at it, to read it, and to consider it. It's available on the web, and it's a really remarkable document in a number of ways. One of the ways it's remarkable is that really for the first time, we have put all of these different strands regarding cyberspace together under one strategic framework. The International Strategy for Cyberspace lays out our vision for the future of the internet and an agenda for partnering with other nations and peoples to realize the prosperity, security, and openness that we seek in our increasingly networked world. To do that, we help to build a consensus of nations that see the value of global networks that are open to new innovations, interoperable the world over, secure enough to support people's work, and reliable enough to earn their trust. This strategy, in many senses, provides a context for all of our efforts that's so critical to understanding the full range of efforts in this area. In the introduction, we talked a little bit about cybersecurity and why cybersecurity is important, and that's obviously true. And for many of the people in this room, that is a tenet of faith. But cybersecurity really doesn't stand alone. Cybersecurity is one part of all the cyber issues in the space, and they're all interrelated. When we talk about global free flow of information, when we talk about internet governance issues, when we talk about military issues, when we talk about combating crime, they're all related and they're all mutually reinforcing. This is meant to be, and it is, an invitation to other states and peoples to join us in realizing the vision we have for this space. And it's a call to the private sector, civil society, and end users to help reinforce this issue. I want to read from the strategy itself, the goal, and it's important that we have never really set forth, either the U.S. or I think many other countries, what our end vision is. It's hard to say where you're going if you don't know. It's hard to get to where you're going if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what the end result is. And our goal that's stated in this strategy is that the United States will work internationally to promote an open, interoperable, secure, and reliable information and communications infrastructure that supports international trade and commerce, strengthens international security, and fosters free expression and innovation. That's obviously a lofty goal. It's a lofty ambition, but it's one that empowers all societies around the world. To reach obviously the reach of network technologies is very pervasive, but to fully realize the benefits of that network technology, we need systems that function reliably and securely. When I think about this, it's almost like a pyramid. Security, as many of you know, is not an aim in itself. It's not an end in itself. Security, internet governance, multi-stakeholder internet governance, protection of privacy, prevention of crime, all are the foundations that allow the things that you want to thrive to happen. The things that you want to thrive are the free flow of information, the social connectivity of the internet and cyberspace offers, and the innovation and economic growth. Those are the top of the pyramid, and it's really undergirded by all those other things. So they do hang together very closely. Assuring the free flow of information, the security and privacy data, and the integrity of interconnected networks are essential to prosperity, global security, and global social connectedness. It's also interesting when we look at, from my perspective, this strategy was in development for almost 2 years. It was an effort to bring together in our government 18 different agencies that worked on this strategy, that tried to come together with their unique perspectives in this area. It also involved consultations with the private sector, with civil liberties and privacy groups, with civil society, with academia, and with many of our foreign partners. So it is not just a uniquely U.S. strategy. It is a strategy that's meant for the rest of the world. And it's also, very importantly, as my new boss, Secretary Clinton said, not a series of prescriptions. It is not meant to be. It's a vision and priorities, but not a series of prescriptions for the rest of the world. It's an articulation of our principles and priorities and our goals. We can't, the U.S. can't, decide what happens on the internet on its own. No nation can, no group can, no agency can. So it's important that this is what our vision is and that we need to find partners and build consensus to achieve it. One, I think, critical part of the strategy, and it's found in the middle of the strategy if you take a look at it, is the importance of norms in cyberspace. And I think this came up this morning on one of the panels that was earlier from our speaker from India and many others who were talking about this issue. One of the key approaches is building a consensus around peaceful and just patterns of interstate conduct, which we call norms of behavior in cyberspace. In order to realize our vision that is outlined in the strategy, we must build and sustain an environment in which norms of responsible behavior guide states' actions, sustain partnerships, and support the rule of law. An environment of clear expectations ground our foreign policy and guides our international partnerships. So what are some of these principles that then lead to norms? Well, some of them are not really unique to cyberspace. Some of them, as you might expect, are norms that we think about in terms of all of our interactions in everyday life. And that's really the way it should be. Cyberspace has some unique attributes, but is grounded in what we do every day. It's grounded in our interactions, in our law, and our conduct in the everyday world. So when we talk about some of the ones we've laid out, upholding fundamental freedoms, respect for property, valuing privacy, protection from crime, and right of self-defense, these are all general topics that are not just unique to cyberspace, but they have application in cyberspace. And at the same time, there are a number of these norms or these principles that are unique to cyberspace, and they're maybe more technically grounded. So global interoperability, making sure that we have a globally interoperable network. Network stability, reliable access, multi-stakeholder governance, and cybersecurity due diligence. These are more grounded in the technology, but they reflect our core values that are the overarching norms or values that we have. That leads to a set of policy priorities in the strategy. So the third chapter of the strategy lays out a number of policy priorities for all of the different parts of our government, but again, there are ones that I think will have resonance with other governments around the world. One of them is, and again, it's important that this is, as you look at this topic, we have not specifically made this a cybersecurity strategy, but a much broader strategy. So one of the priorities is economy, protecting international standards and innovation, open markets to ensure that cyberspace continues to serve the needs of economies and innovators. So that's an economic perspective, and it's not an accident that we led in the strategy with economy, because that's one of the driving forces behind cyberspace and one of the key benefits it's given to societies around the world. The second is protecting our networks, enhancing security, reliability, and resiliency, because strong cybersecurity is critical to national and economic security in the broadest sense. So that's more the cybersecurity aspect that undergirds economic growth. The third is law enforcement, extending collaboration and the rule of law to enhance confidence in cyberspace and pursue those who exploit online systems. That's something that I spent much of my career doing, something that Mike spent part of his career doing, and he spent part of his career at DHS protecting those systems as well. It's something that is a critical component of making sure this is a reliable environment. The fourth is military, preparing for 21st century challenges, security challenges, since our commitment to defend our citizens, allies, and interests extends to wherever they may be threatened. And obviously our military also, like all of us, is very dependent on cyberspace to communicate and to act, and it's important they safeguard their systems. The fifth is internet governance, promoting effective and inclusive structures to promote internet governance that effectively serves the needs for all internet users, and that is the multi-stakeholder governance system that has been so successful in advancing the internet. Not just the government, but the private sector, users, and NGOs that really makes the internet the active driving force in our society. And the next is international development, building capacity, security, and prosperity promote the benefits of network technology globally and enhancing the reliability of our shared networks. So one of the key things that we're trying to do around the world, and it's not just us alone, but I think it's, again, a partnership of all of us, is to make sure that we reach out to the developing world, to make sure that capacity is built, both legal capacity, policy capacity, technical capacity, so that all nations can share in this and all nations can be part of this discussion. And the last, but certainly not the least, is internet freedom, securing fundamental freedoms of privacy and freedom of information in cyberspace, something that my boss, the Secretary, has spoken passionately about and something that's one of our core values. So the other thing that my boss said when she was rolling out the strategy is that together these, and this is very significant, at least in my view it's very significant, that these 7 buckets, these 7 priority areas constitutes a new, and the decision and the work to build these norms of behavior in cyberspace constitute a new foreign policy imperative, Too often, and I think many in the room who have been involved in this area very long, Scott Charney and others, have seen that people regard cyber issues often as technical issues, often as niche issues, often as issues that are important in some degree but really don't fit into the larger policy-making framework and don't fit into the larger foreign policy-making framework. To say that this is a new foreign policy imperative, not just for the U.S., as evidenced by the strategy, but for many other countries as well, elevates us to an issue that is clear it's going to affect all of our everyday lives in the future, something that we all need to grapple with. And I think part of the outcome of this is how do you achieve that foreign policy objective? How do you achieve the secure, reliable, trustworthy systems that you want in the future? How do you enable this growth? How do you enable continuing innovation? And how do you enable continuing free flow of information? One of the key ways you do that is by patient, persistent, and creative diplomacy, engaging other countries in a way that we really haven't before to try to build a consensus around these areas. State has taken a leading role in this in the past. We're not starting from a ground stop. Either us or any of the other agencies in the U.S. are not starting from a ground stop in this area, but we're building on what we've done before in a more unified way than we have before. And there has been much done, but there really remains much to do. I mean, I think all of the people in this room, all of you who have followed this area for as long as I have, know that there have been ups and downs in this area. There have been attentions to this area, and then the area has been left alone to some extent. But there's a real feeling of excitement and opportunity right now. I mean, I can tell you from a personal perspective that I've been involved in this area for about 20 years in different capacities. And during that 20 years, I've never found a time where it's been so ripe, where we have so many opportunities, where I'm so excited about those opportunities to really make substantial forward progress. Aware, though, that there are key challenges that we need to face. So there are challenges but opportunities that we have, but it is really, I think, a unique time in our history and a unique opportunity that we need to act during. This all brings me close to the conclusion of my speech. One of the things I mentioned in the beginning of my speech that I had another joke I would tell, and so I will tell it now, just fair warning. The joke was going to be a lawyer joke, but I've now converted it to a hacker joke, and I apologize to some of you who've heard this before. Tough. hacker was walking down the beach and finds a lamp and rubs it, and predictably enough, a genie comes out. And the genie says, look, you get 3 wishes, but because you're a hacker, there's some strings attached. Everything you wish for, every other hacker gets twice as much of. And the hacker says, I can live with that. Okay, let's get on with this. And the genie says, okay, what's your first wish? And the hacker says, well, I want a million stolen credit card numbers. So he gets a million stolen credit card numbers, but every other hacker gets 2 million stolen credit card numbers. And hackers are very competitive people. This really irks him. He was really quite upset by this. And the genie says, hurry up, what's your second wish? And the hacker thinks about it and says, I want a Cray supercomputer. So he gets a Cray supercomputer, but every other hacker gets the Cray supercomputer and the IBM computer that just won on Jeopardy recently. And again, just irks him. He's just really kind of upset by this. So the genie says, hurry up, I need to get back in the bottle and watch Larry Hagman reruns. What's your third wish? And the hacker pauses, he thinks about it and says, I'd like to donate a kidney. So the moral of that story is that we are facing a large number, a wide range of threats in cyberspace. We are facing threats from organized criminal groups, very sophisticated organized criminal groups, from nation states, from terrorists, from many others, and also from lone gunman hackers who have been doing this for a long time. Our systems are often vulnerable. We are very dependent on them. The only way we're really going to make progress internationally is working together. And the vision of cyberspace's future that we lay out in our strategy is not a uniquely American vision. It is instead intended to be a vision that it aims to empower all countries around the world and all nations and all people around the globe. To realize that vision, we need to have the partnership of all the people in this room. We need to have partnerships with the governments around this room and many who are not here. We need to have the partnerships with private industry. We need to have partnerships with civil society. We need to have partnerships with everyday people. Only through these partnerships can we make sure that we build a consensus and maximize the tremendous capacity and ability of this transformative technology to continue to make changes and continue to guide us into the future. And that's what the international strategy is about. That's what my new position at the State Department is about, to bring all those different issues together for us and our government, in our international diplomacy, working with the rest of our government. That's why I'm so happy to be here to talk to you and to engage with all of you, and I'm so happy this conference is happening. So thank you for your time, and go back to dinner.